close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel, YoungMinds. Good evening and also good morning to our speaker, Miss Sabrina here. And also not forget people in Canada. Good morning to you all. Okay, I hope you guys doing great during this weekend, all right? And thank you all for finding your time and visiting today's webinar. All right. Okay, so my name is Lisa and I will be your moderator for tonight. Okay, so let's talk a bit about our topic, shall we, on taking care of our mental health, especially during this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic. So as we all know, this pandemic has effect on our lives, right? Many of us are facing challenges at the moment. It can be stressful and it can cause strong emotions in ourselves, right? So Sabrina, for your information, in Malaysia right now, we are currently in the middle of MCO, which is stand for Movement Control Order for 2 weeks, with a lot of restrictions and so on. But since the daily cases still not going down, still not achieve the target yet, unfortunately, the MCO will extend for another 2 weeks. I know this is hard for those in Malaysia, but everything has pros and cons. So let's just hope, let's just pray for a better day. All right. Okay, so before I begin this webinar, I would like to share a little bit with all of you about us, about YoungMinds. What is YoungMind and who we are? All right. Okay, for those who new here, YoungMinds is a social enterprise and we are focusing on helping the youth with mental health issues and disorders, regardless of their backgrounds. Okay, so if you are currently looking for help or if you are struggling with the issues, so just feel free to drop by our social media or you guys can also contact us through our email, or maybe you guys can get in touch with our professionals and our fellows as well. Okay, so before we begin our topic tonight, I would like to introduce all the audience here about our beautiful speaker, Sabrina Khandai. She is a registered psychotherapist in Ontario, Canada, and she also a certified clinical trauma professional and provides psychotherapy services to youth, adults, caregivers, and families for a variety emotional, social, and mental health challenges. Wow, that's such an important person. Okay, so let's welcome her, shall we? So how are you? How are you doing, Sabrina?
Hi, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm doing well, and I can't wait to talk more about this topic.
That's great. I can't wait to hear from you. Okay, so and it's such an honor to moderate with you, Sabrina. So Sabrina, what do you think about the topic? What first came to your mind as soon as you heard about the topic? Or maybe perhaps you can define or elaborate a little bit about our topic for tonight, maybe?
Definitely, no. So I think the first thing that came to mind for me is just how important it is to talk about mental health, especially during the pandemic, because almost all of us have been affected in some way during this pandemic, and especially mentally and emotionally. And so really, my goal for tonight is to show everybody and help everyone see that they're not alone in their struggles. And although this is a really difficult time, we can find ways to cope. And that's exactly what this presentation will be about tonight. It's just all the different ways that we can try to cope during this really difficult time.
Yeah, that's true. So, all right, perfect. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for a little and tremendous introduction. Okay, so before we move on, just want to let the audience know, we will have a Q&A session at the end of this program, okay? So you guys can ask any question from now on here in the comment down below. Just type the questions there and we will answer the questions at the end of this program, okay? All right, okay, perfect. All right, let's move on to our next session. All right, now without further ado, we will turn the time over to Sabrina, our speaker for today. Okay, great. Let's move on to our first question, shall we, Sabrina? Okay.
Let's do it, Lisa.
Yes, let's do this. The first questions will be, what are the emotional and mental impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Great question. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can all follow along together. And you let me know when, can you see it, Lisa?
Yes, absolutely. It's very clear. I can see.
So there have been so many impacts during the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm sure that the ones I've listed here are not all of them, but these are some of the main impacts that I have seen within my work with my clients and just across the globe, what we've heard about. So just to go over briefly, of course, grief and loss. And of course, this means the loss of our loved ones, unfortunately, and the grief that comes with having to live in a world that isn't as we expected it to be, having to miss out on events that should have been happening or that we thought would be happening, and even having to change to cope with different transitions coming up in our life, whether that be like change of learning styles and having to like grieve and cope with that. So much grief and loss, which kind of ties into social isolation. A lot of us feel like we've lost the communities and social networks that we were once part of. A lot of times we then start feeling helpless and hopelessness, which comes from fear and anxiety as well. There's so much that's out of our control right now. And there's so much that is unknown or that is scary about our current world. And that oftentimes can kind of heighten feelings of hopelessness or helplessness. And then for the youth, of course, or young adults, academic challenges. We're all having to adjust to online learning and not being in class and with our peers. And that is so difficult for so many people. We're seeing much more relational conflicts. We're all having to spend more time with the people that we live with, which sometimes is a really good thing and sometimes can be really difficult for people depending on who you live with. And of course, major changes in our routines. Many people, because of all of these changes, they're feeling irritable, they're feeling angry about what's going on. And of course, that may lead sometimes to more extreme and kind of unsafe behaviors like suicidality or self-harming behaviors. And for many, we find, financial and job instability is happening, which can lead to like food instability. So many major impacts. And I know these are not all of them, just a few to name.
Yes, that's absolutely. It's just maybe this is just one part of the impacts. They have a lot of impacts, right? Okay, that's lovely. Next questions. How can people begin to cope with the emotional and mental health impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Great question, Lisa. And that is exactly what we're here to talk about today. And so I want to introduce you to something that I call like the triple S approach. And what it does, it's highlighting like three main areas of our life that we can focus on and try to kind of support ourselves in so that we can be emotionally resilient and, have, the best mental health that we can during a time like this. So the 3S approach is basically just reflecting on three areas of our life. Or three kind of skills. The first one is safety skills. So that means our personal safety skills, how we deal with emotional crises as they come up. The next is self-care tools, which we'll talk about. How do we kind of take care of ourselves on a day-to-day basis so that we are resilient to emotional stressors that come up during a pandemic? And then the third is social connection. So how do we really improve our connection with others and stay connected so that we're not feeling so isolated? As we know, isolation, it just totally impacts our mental and emotional health, and it makes things so much worse. And one thing I wanted to add, Lisa, was that tonight I was going to talk, a lot of the strategies and the skills that I'm going to talk about come from a type of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy. And so this is an evidence-based type of therapy that was developed by Marsha Linehan, and it centers in behavioral therapy practices, but it also has a lot of mindfulness and Zen practices woven into it. And dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT as we call it, it's really focused on helping individuals create a life worth living. And it does that by focusing on 4 areas of skills. So mindfulness skills, emotion regulation skills, relationship effectiveness skills, and distress tolerance skills. And so DBT helps people to manage crises. It helps them regulate and understand their emotions. It helps us to form healthy relationships and also reduces impulsive and ineffective behaviors. So I'm excited that we're going to talk a bit about that tonight as well.
So yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so the next one, Sabrina. Okay, how can people focus on their personal safety throughout the COVID-19 pandemic?
Great question. Great question. Safety skills are so important. And so when we think of safety skills, basically these are the skills we're going to use to help us navigate and cope with an emotional crisis. And so when I talk about an emotional crisis, I'm talking about a time when we are feeling really emotionally distressed. We're having intense emotions. Maybe we're having just really intense thoughts as well. And our mind is kind of like an emotional storm. So our thoughts might even get to the point of thinking about hurting ourselves or wanting to end our life or engaging in some type of unsafe behavior. And so something that's important to know before we talk about the strategies is that, during an emotional crisis, our mind is in a stress state, which means that our body is in a stress state. And when our body is in a stress state, we're going to start noticing different physiological changes within our body. So we might notice our heart is beating really fast, or our mind is racing and feels full. Our breathing gets heavier, or our muscles get tense. And the diagram that I have here, it explains a little bit more of what we can see during an emotional crisis. And the whole point is that we are going to use our safety skills to help us calm our mind, which will help us decrease these intense thoughts that we might have, and that will help us calm our body so that we can get through the emotional crisis and keep ourselves safe. So this actually leads me to the first set of skills that we're going to talk about for how we can keep ourselves safe. And these two skills focus on changing the physiological state of our body. And when, like I mentioned, when we calm our bodies down, we calm our minds down, and then our emotions calm down with it. So the first thing we can do if we're in an emotional crisis is we can think about temperature change. And actually, Lisa, when we start to cool our body temperature, our heart rate actually slows down. And when our heart rate slows down, our mind calms down and our emotions calm down. So a couple ways that we can kind of cool our bodies down is by getting like a bowl of just a regular bowl that you could fit your face into, filling it with cold water and ice cubes, and then submerging your face into the bowl and holding your breath for like 15 or 20 seconds. And then repeating that, coming up for air and repeating that 3 or 4 times, or splashing really cold water on your face repeatedly for 15 to 20 seconds and repeating that 3 to 4 times. Or if you don't want to do that, you could get an ice pack or a pack of frozen peas or a bag of ice cubes and hold it on your forehead or the back of your neck for 20 to 30 seconds at a time and repeating that 3 to 4 times. And that is a really effective way to quickly calm our emotions down and decrease emotional intensity. And another thing we can do, which is one of my favorite things because we can do it anywhere, anytime, and no one knows we're doing this coping skill, is what we call paced breathing. And Lisa, paced breathing is just another way of saying deep breathing. But the special thing about this kind of breathing is that we're going to breathe really slowly, and we're going to breathe for about 3 to 5 minutes, really focusing on slow and deep breaths down into our stomach. And our exhale is going to be longer than our inhale. So when we have a longer exhale, that's actually what helps to slow our heart rate down and help us come to, maybe we won't feel completely calm, but it will help us get out of that emotional crisis place. So I have a couple more that I'm going to share with you that are also really helpful. I don't know if you've heard of grounding, Lisa, but grounding is basically like when we're trying to kind of bring our body and our minds back to the present during a really emotionally intense moment. And a lot of times when we're really emotionally distressed, we notice that our mind is thinking about the past or we're thinking about the future worries, right? And grounding is a really great way to just bring ourselves back to the present moment and refocus. So we're not focusing on those intense thoughts or unwanted urges, and it helps us just increase our emotional safety. So one of my favorite ways for grounding It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding, and it's on the slide here. So what we do, we use our senses to kind of connect with our present moment. So this is a great skill that you can use anywhere, and you don't have to say it out loud. You can just say it in your mind so that you can ground in the moment. So what you do is wherever you are, you focus on 5 things you can see in your environment. So you look around and find 5 things you see. You look for 4 things you can touch in your environment, and you touch them. And you listen for 3 things you can hear in your environment, and just notice them and observe what you can hear. Notice 2 things you smell and 1 thing you can taste. And when we're able to do this and we can focus on the present, it just helps to redirect our mind away from getting stuck in that emotional storm of thoughts. And so it helps us calm down, and it can help us come out of an emotional crisis. And some other ways that are kind of a little bit less formal ways of grounding that are really fun, we can just stomp our feet on the ground. And a lot of times just feeling the ground beneath our feet reminds us to come back to the present moment and get out of our minds. Or if you like intensely kind of flavored foods, we could even like bite into like a lemon, or eat something really, really sour, or something really cold or spicy. And basically the intense flavor will kind of just help us come back to the moment, and it'll just distract us from our thoughts that we're having in our mind that's kind of causing a lot of emotional distress. And I have one more kind of safety skill that I want to talk about, and it has to do with our senses as well. Because remember, we build safety by calming our minds and our bodies down, so that we can kind of feel emotionally calm. So this is one of my favorites, and what it is, it's called self-soothing with our 5 senses. And the term self-soothe, it just means that we're providing comfort to ourselves and to our bodies so we can feel more calm and lower those intense emotions and get through an emotional crisis. So basically, I love this diagram here that I found on Instagram, and I put the source. So if anybody wants to, find it and save it, they can find it themselves. But what you do is you basically just like engage with your 5 senses in a way that helps you feel calm. And self-soothing is really helpful because you can use anything in your home that helps you feel calm. So for smell, maybe you'll find your favorite candle or your favorite body cream that you like the smell of and that makes you feel calm. For taste, you might have your favorite snack or your favorite gum that helps you feel calm. For sound, people tell me that they make like a calming playlist of their favorite, like maybe calming songs, or listen to some type of sound that is really relaxing. I know recently I got into listening to lo-fi, and I find that so relaxing. So I've been doing that. Sight, that could be just like looking at a really nice view. So if you live in an apartment and you have a nice view, you can look out on your balcony or at your window, or looking at some pictures from a really good memory, or a memory that makes you really happy, and going through your camera roll. And then for touch, you could wear comfy clothing, wrap up in your favorite blanket, or if you have a pet at home, you can just like cuddle with your pet. And these are all ways that we can kind of use, Lisa, to keep ourselves safe and to just get through an emotional crisis when our emotions are very, very intense.
All right, that's perfect. Actually, Sabrina, speaking of touch, the first thing that came to my mind is my cat,
Mine too, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I get stressed, I go around my house and then I try to find, where's my cat? I want to hug you, all right, something like that. That's
Me too.
awesome.
He tries to run away from me though, my cat.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes. Okay, so let's move on to the next question, shall we? Okay, do you think should youth and adults reach out to others for support during times of emotional?
Definitely. Definitely, yes. I think that we should reach out for support. I think it's so easy for any of us, youth or adults, anybody, to feel alone, especially during the pandemic. And, you know, we don't have to feel alone because there are people out there who can support us. And, you know, if we don't have a loved one or someone we really trust that we can reach out to, I've put some information here on the slide about some local crisis lines that people could reach out to. These crisis lines have trained volunteers that are here to help and here to keep you safe. But I think, you know, this is such a difficult time for everybody. It is even harder to go through it alone. So yes, 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 please reach out for support, whether that's a personal support or a more professional support, or even, you know, speaking with a therapist or a counselor or spiritual leader, whoever you feel comfortable reaching out to. And we all deserve support, so.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So the audience, please take notes on this number as well. You guys also can reach out to them. Okay, so we've talked about personal safety skills, right? So now, how can people improve their self-care throughout the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, definitely. So great question. So we're moving on to the second S in the triple S approach. And so self-care is so important because these are like, self-care is basically the things we're going to do on a regular or even daily basis that helps us stay emotionally resilient, and especially during a pandemic. And I think self-care is so important to me because I think there's so much out of our control during the pandemic right now. There's so much that we truly do not have control over. And choosing how we're going to take care of ourselves and how we're going to practice self-care is something we have control over. So we can reestablish and find some control in our lives by engaging in self-care and choosing how we do that. So for a lot of us, you know, Lisa's been talking about this a lot tonight, and so have I. So much in our lives have changed, and we've all had to kind of create what we call a new normal. So kind of like a new way of going about our daily lives. And a lot of times, I know this might sound very basic, but something that's actually very helpful that a lot of people are struggling with right now is creating a personal routine. And a personal routine can really help us because it's almost like you can think about all the things that go into a personal routine as like the foundation for good mental health. Because a personal routine will include things like a consistent sleeping and waking time, making sure that we're eating regularly. Lisa, have you heard of the term hangry?
Turn hangry? You mean like hungry and angry at the same time?
Exactly, yes. Exactly. So we want to avoid getting hangry. We want to avoid, I also say anxious, so like hungry and anxious at this. So we want to make sure we're eating regularly. We want to get some kind of regular physical activity, especially if we're noticing that we're feeling unmotivated or we're feeling more of the sad and down emotions. Getting physical activity will help us to get those like good chemicals in our brain going so we can feel a little bit better. And personal hygiene, right? It might sound so simple, but when we're not feeling well emotionally, it's so hard to take care of our bodies physically, like brushing our teeth, washing our face, showering, but all of these things are going to help us feel emotionally better. And then, of course, you know, making sure if we have any prescribed medications or like vitamins or supplements, we are taking them like per the discretion of our doctors or our wellness providers. And part of a personal routine is also completing tasks. So doing little things, right, throughout the day that help us feel accomplished. And depending on how you're feeling and where you're at, this might be as little as making your bed every day, or maybe doing your dishes, or maybe it'll be a little bit more like doing homework or a research assignment. But basically, the more we can get a task completed or get things done in our day, the more accomplished we feel and the more in control of our emotions we feel. And that will help us to kind of decrease the intensity of our emotions and increase our ability to cope with cope day to day. And I just want to say that I know that if, when you look at what makes up a personal routine, and this is not everything, like some people's routine might look different. If many areas are off in your routine, like you're not doing well in those areas, it can feel so overwhelming to try to change everything at once. So I always recommend just focus on one part of your routine at a time that you want to improve, and focus on just like small baby steps. So that's like one part of self-care. And the other part of self-care is pleasant activities. I know for so many of us, there's so many things that we used to enjoy doing, like seeing friends or going to the mall, going to clubs, like sewing club or soccer club, things like that we can't do anymore. And so we have to find a new way to enjoy pleasant activities. And a pleasant activity is basically anything that makes you feel good, anything that you enjoy doing. It could be a hobby, it could be anything that you like. And it's the thing that makes us feel energized and makes us feel good. And we can do these things on our own, or we can do them with others. And I really encourage people to make pleasant activities part of their daily routine, part of their personal routine, because we can forget to do fun things for ourselves. It's so easy to forget that and just focus on our chores and school and things like that. So I always encourage people to schedule it in for yourself or make it part of your daily routine so that you are doing something positive for yourself every day, or as much as you can. And then something, I think this is really, really important. This is kind of my last point on kind of self-care, but a really important point. And it's what we call self-validation and self-compassion. And so self-validation, I'll explain, it means we're accepting our experiences and our thoughts and our feelings as being true for ourselves. And we're kind of taking ourselves seriously. So self-validation is when we use like our self-talk, like our self-talk is what we say to ourselves. So when we use our self-talk to say things like, what I feel makes sense, or of course I'm feeling nervous about the rising number of the COVID-19 virus in my community, or of course I feel sad that I can't go to school. So we're really kind of just letting ourselves know that what we feel is okay. And self-validation is so important because just as humans, we all want to feel like what we are thinking and feeling makes sense and is okay. And that's exactly what we do through self-validation. And when we can validate ourselves, it actually calms our emotions down so much. And it helps us to feel resilient, and it helps us to just feel so much better. So it helps with intense emotions a lot. And then the other side of this is self-compassion, also very similar to self-validation. And self-compassion is just a fancy way of saying, be kind to yourself, be warm, be gentle with yourself, offer yourself understanding, especially when you feel like you're suffering, or you feel like you're failing, or you're feeling inadequate, or something like that. And there's so many ways that we can be kind to ourselves, but one of my favorites is expressing gratitude towards ourselves. And so we can give ourselves gratitude by focusing on the things that we are doing well or that are going well in our life. Because I don't know about you, Lisa, but especially in this pandemic, it's so easy to focus on what's going wrong and focus on the things that are not going well. So with gratitude, we can say to ourselves, we can focus on the little things, even like we can thank ourselves or say, I'm so grateful that even though I'm feeling so sad, I was able to get out of bed today and make myself some breakfast. Or I'm so grateful that even though school is so hard for me right now, I attended my class and I paid attention. So we want to find ways to thank ourselves for doing and surviving this pandemic, because we've never been in this situation before and we're all just trying our best. And we can also show self-compassion by just speaking kindly to ourselves. So again, our self-talk, right? What we say to ourselves. We can make sure we're not using judgments or negative labels towards ourselves. And instead of using judgments, we're using facts to describe situations. And then lastly, this is my favorite thing to do, be your own cheerleader. And so that literally means cheer yourself on. Say to yourself, like, good job, or you did it, or I got through that. Like, whatever you need to tell yourself, be your own cheerleader. So thank you, Lisa. Just some self-care tips.
Yes, Sabrina. I love that. The last sentence, be your own cheerleader. I love that one. Okay, so Sabrina, the next one, how can youth and adults maintain their social connections and relationships during COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns and restrictions?
Great question. And I know so relevant to everyone in Malaysia and other parts right now in the world. And we know that, this brings us to our third S of our triple S approach, which is social connection. And we all know that social connection is a really real challenge, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially during times of lockdowns or any kind of public health restriction. So I really encourage that everybody try to use creative ways to stay connected. Before the pandemic, we may have just been used to meeting up in person and doing in-person get-togethers, but I encourage you to find different ways now. So of course, video chatting, maybe socially distanced visits if that's allowed in your community, phone calls or text messages, some letters. I know I've been sending my friends letters and they have been enjoying that and liking hearing from me that way. Or emails, maybe on social media, we can stay connected to people, even through online games. I know a lot of online games have like a chat feature, and that's a great way to stay connected, or joining some kind of online group that's based on your interest. And some other things to consider when we think about like social connection during this time is that we might want to consider scheduling times to connect with others or building it into our personal routine so that we don't kind of avoid talking with others and that we don't isolate ourselves. And I find if I have scheduled a Zoom call with my friends, it actually gives me something to look forward to in the week. And I get really excited about talking with my friends. So when we schedule our social connections, it also gives us something really fun to look forward to. I also want to say, don't be afraid to initiate planning a phone call or a video chat. I think sometimes we might easily feel, oh, what if my friend doesn't want to talk to me? What if they're busy? We're nervous about that. I probably, like, the odds are that they also want to connect, but maybe they're hesitant to reach out. So I would say if you want to talk to somebody, don't be afraid to reach out and plan it with them. And don't be afraid to try new virtual platforms to connect with people. It's great because right now we can connect all over the world. Like, I'm in Canada, you're in Malaysia, like, we're connecting with people we probably would not have connected with before. And then this is a really important point. The last point I try to remember too, we really want to choose to spend time with people that make us feel good. And this is like a boundary that we can set for ourselves. The people that we choose to socialize with and have in our life really should be people that make us feel good about ourselves and help us kind of get through this time in a positive way. So thank you for that question, Lisa.
Yes, that's absolutely right. As you guys know, today's technology getting advanced and more advanced, right? So we can just literally do anything, or maybe like search everything at the tip of our finger. And maybe we can, like Sabrina said before, we can try a new platform to connect with people, right? Okay. All right. Okay. Just one more question, Sabrina. The last question for you. Is it okay to ask our friends or family members how they are coping with the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes. So I would say definitely yes. It is okay to ask, especially because I think it's, as important as it is for us to reach out to people when we need support and to get that support from our loved one. It's also totally okay to reach out to your loved ones or your friends or whoever it is and ask how they're doing. I think, of course, consider if you have the emotional capacity to be asking that question and to be checking in on people. And if you do, I think a lot of people will appreciate you asking, because I think a lot of times we're afraid to kind of say how we feel, and we're afraid to start that conversation. But if we have somebody asking us, we'll feel so much more comfortable to actually share how we're feeling and get it off our chest. And a lot of times just asking simply, how are you doing, makes such a huge difference in somebody's life and somebody's day. But of course, I would caution that if someone says, I don't want to talk about it, we want to respect their boundaries if they say, like, I don't really want to talk about it. So just make sure you do that as well. And yeah, like, I think too, the one thing I want to say too, a lot of times we think that we have to be like talking forever to support somebody, but we can actually support and connect with our loved ones even without talking. I know a lot of my clients, they'll do like a Zoom call with their friend and study together, like on the Zoom call, or just do their homework together. And it just helps to have somebody else there so you feel like you're not alone. Or a lot of people I know, they'll like watch Netflix together, like share the screen on Zoom, or do like Netflix party and watch Netflix together. And it's just little ways like that we can like support each other and check in with each other and help remind us all that like people are here for you and people have your back and you're not alone. So yeah, so definitely yes, Lisa.
All right, that's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you, Sabrina. So that was very informative presentation. I love it, and the explanation was magnificent. And yeah, I really hope the audience also can learn something new from Miss Sabrina tonight, right? Okay, so after this, we will go ahead with the Q&A session and take some time for the questions now. Okay, just a reminder, the audience, please be sure to type your questions, any questions in the comment section below. Either you are watching this webinar from YouTube or from Facebook, doesn't matter. Okay, so, all right, let's see, okay, do we have any questions? I think we have questions coming in. Okay. Wait a second, let's take a look. All right. All right, so, okay, great. Let's move on to our first question here. All right, the first question. Okay. So, we have the first question. So we know that COVID-19 kind
Oh, that's such a great question, because I can imagine that when you turn on the radio, you turn on the TV, it's so much information that we're seeing even online. So we're kind of just being bombarded with so much images and so much information. It's so true, Lisa, we can get very exhausted being exposed to like really emotional or graphic information. And so I would say, first of all, I think that makes so much sense that we would feel overwhelmed by seeing that kind of difficult information constantly, and we would feel afraid. And so the biggest thing that I would consider is our boundaries. So I would say that if we know that, doing something like watching the news is going to be very triggering for us, or might make us feel very anxious or very uncomfortable, I would really start putting boundaries on how long you're watching the news. Maybe you cut it out altogether. Really make an effort to put a boundary on like not going to websites too often that might be reporting on COVID-19, or changing the channel if like something comes up. And so I think it's a lot about just like trying not to expose ourselves to as much of that information by just kind of controlling what we are. Sometimes it can be hard because maybe the people we live with, they like to watch the news, or they like to watch all of that information. And so we could try to talk with them about how it makes us feel and ask if, they would consider not watching that kind of material around us. Or we may have to if that's playing in our homes, we may have to like go to our room at that time and do a different activity so that we're not exposed to that kind of material. But I think the biggest way to kind of help with that is just limiting the amount of information you are taking in about COVID by putting boundaries around the things that you're watching or listening to or that's being played around you. So yeah, so really great question. Really great question.
Right, okay. That's really great answer too. Thank you so much, Sabrina. All right. So, all right, perfect. Let's move on to the next questions. All right. Okay, we have questioned, is eating disorders also leading to mental health? Tips to stay committed to eat healthier.
Yes. So I definitely, especially I know in Ontario, they recently are putting out a lot of data that eating disorders amongst youth, especially, so like within childhood populations, have increased so much since the pandemic started. And I don't think this is surprising because a lot of times eating disorders, I'm not an expert in eating disorders, but from what I know, a lot of times they're like a very like family issue and a lot of times to do with like control and lack of control. So I think it makes sense that we're kind of seeing this increase right now. I would say that, you know, in terms of like trying to stick to healthy eating, I would say make it part of your routine. When we make something part of our routine, we make it a habit, right? And so when we build a habit, we don't have to like plan as much. We don't have to like think about what we need to do because it's almost like it becomes automatic over time. And so I would say definitely try to make like healthy eating part of your routine, which means like think about, do I need to meal prep for like, am I having 3 meals a day or whatever I'm having? What times of the day am I eating? Like try to have in your mind a little bit of a schedule. What times am I eating? And I would say to, you know, start small. If it's really overwhelming to have a routine around 3 meals, start small, start with 1 meal, having that regularly, and get support about this. I would say turn to a parent or a loved one or a professional to really get more support around this. But yeah, thank you for that question.
All right, that's awesome. All right. Okay, lovely. Okay, next questions. We've got question from Nur Atika. Okay, so the questions sound like this, Sabrina. How to control or handle overthink? Like any tips for it?
Okay, overthinking. How to control and handle overthink. Oh yes, that is such a common thing that I think all of us humans go through. You're not alone. And especially if we're feeling anxious or we're feeling any kind of intense emotion, our mind is going to be overthinking and just thinking so much. And so I would say one of the best things to do with overthinking is to start with validating. Start with telling yourself, okay, what I'm thinking makes sense, how I'm feeling makes sense. That is going to help us just to be a little bit more calm right off the bat. And then I think from there, with overthinking, our mind is stressed. So remember from the presentation, when our mind is stressed, our emotions and our body is stressed. So we want to try to calm our body down. So if we calm our body down using some of the self-soothing or the grounding that I talked about, or even some of the self-care tips, or something as simple as deep breathing, you'll notice that your mind can refocus and feel a little bit more calm. So I would say definitely self-validation, and then try to use some kind of grounding or self-soothing or like deep breathing to help calm your body down. So that will help calm your mind down. Or distractions. Distractions is another thing too. You can put music on, so you kind of pay attention to that, or watch your favorite show. That can sometimes, distracting ourselves from our thoughts can help us to think about something different. Thank you,
All
Lisa.
right. You're welcome. All right, that's true. That's true. All right, the next one, we have another question.
Okay.
Okay, the questions sound like this.
Okay.
Okay, so why do we need to keep informed, and why do we need a plan?
Why do we need to keep informed?
Yes, and why do we need a plan? Okay, do you understand the question?
A plan for.
Like maybe how can we keep our day active? Something like can this?
Okay, yes.
Something like
Yes. So I think like we can, it's important to keep informed, and I'm guessing that means informed about like the COVID-19 pandemic. And like I said, but finding a balance, if you're finding that, if it's enough for you to just for 10 minutes every day, just look at the news and get the information you need and then no more news for the day, find the balance that you need. And I think, like with Lisa said, with making a plan to be active, it's important because when we're kind of being active and we're kind of doing things in our day to day, it's a great way to kind of fight against, especially feelings of depression or feelings of sadness. You might notice that when we're feeling more unmotivated or we're feeling kind of like helpless or hopeless because of the pandemic, we start to feel kind of sad and we start to feel very down. And when that happens, we don't really want to do anything. We don't want to plan anything. We don't want to participate in anything. And we just want to think about baby steps, right? So slowly starting to develop like a plan for our personal routine, slowly starting to develop a plan for maybe like getting tasks done in our day-to-day life or attending to like physical activity. And I think a plan is important because when we follow it, even if it's like the smallest, simplest plan, like it has one step on it, we're going to feel accomplished. And when we feel accomplished, we feel in control of our emotions and we feel emotionally a lot better. So I hope that answers that question, Lisa.
All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Sabrina. Okay. So, let's go to the next question. All right. We have question. All right. I think this good. I mean, for me, it's kind of good. Okay, how do you spend at home because of the COVID-19? I mean,
how do I spend time at home?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love to do everything relaxing, to be honest, Lisa. So I like to paint and I spend time with my cat. I work from home, so I also have to work and see my clients through video. But I try to make sure I have a balance between like working and disconnecting after work and then doing relaxing things. And I've been doing a lot of baking, actually, trying new recipes and trying to get good at cooking. So I've been doing a lot of relaxing things at home and just like self-care things like going for walks or going for hikes whenever I can. So that's what I've been doing at home. I think we all have to find just something that helps us feel good, something that we enjoy, as well as like taking care of our responsibilities, whether that's school or work. So Lisa, I hope you're doing similar stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I love that one that you try a new recipe. That's very nice.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so I think, since we are running out of time, so we will choose just another one more questions. All right. Is it okay for you, Sabrina? Just one last question. Okay, so the last question, I think this is good too. Okay, so this question sounds like this. How physical activity levels have changed? A study have shown those who have remained physically active during the pandemic have done so primarily to maintain their mental health.
Yes, I think there's a lot of truth to those studies probably. And so it's kind of like what I was saying earlier, like with physical activity, we're moving our bodies, we're getting those good chemicals in our brains that make us feel good. We're getting that going. And we feel accomplished, right? Like when I know when I go on a hike, I feel like really good about myself and I'm like, yay, you did it, like being a cheerleader. And I think too, like, physical activity and being physically active, it's the opposite of depression, right? Like depression makes us want to like lay in bed not really leave our homes, isolate. And that's a really real issue during the pandemic. Like, we all have felt like that, and that's okay. It's hard to start being physically active if you felt that way. But what I want to say is that when we are physically active, it really does help with our emotions, because it truly is like the opposite. It brings the opposite feeling of like that depression. We don't get stuck in that kind of sadness and that unmotivation. It helps our mind stay active, and it just helps us feel accomplished, right? And when we feel accomplished and we're feeling like we're doing things, we feel so much better about ourselves, and we feel kind of at peace and more pleasant emotions. But I just want to validate how hard it is to get started. And so I always say baby steps. All of these skills that I've talked about tonight, it sounds like in the perfect world, we would all do this, but we're not perfect, and we're not in a perfect world. And so we have to take baby steps. So do what is best for you, and do what's right for you, and take the baby steps, whether it's like, maybe you just go for a 10-minute walk once a week and you start there, and then you gradually increase to 20 minutes twice a week. Do what you need to do for yourself.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways.
SK Resilience Center. Is it true? Right? SK Resilience Center. All right. Wait a second. We have... Oh. All right. I think we are back live. Right? Okay. Okay, that's awesome. I think we're back. Okay, so just want to repeat again. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for answering the last questions. Okay, so everyone, audience here, by answering these questions, I believe our Q&A session has already ended. All right, and I'm so sorry for everyone who've been asking but didn't get the answer yet. But do not worry, you guys might also contact with our speaker, Sabrina, on her social media. All right. For those who want to keep in touch with our speaker, you guys can follow her on her Instagram with her username at SK Resilience Center. That's true, right, Sabrina?
Yes, Lisa.
Right. And or you might also see her account on the screen right now. Okay, so all right. Okay, unfortunately, we have come to our end of our webinar today. Oh my God, that's so sad. So before we end our webinar tonight, I would like to request just one last time from our speaker here, for like a short conclusion or like any advice to the audience.
Yes. So thank you so much, Lisa. I just want to end off by saying thank you so much for being a moderator and being here with me today. I've enjoyed all of your questions, and just thank you to everybody watching. I hope you've taken something away today, and just thank you so much to YoungMinds in general for having me. I've really enjoyed my time. I just want to say, to my final kind of messages to everybody watching, you're not alone in this. We are all in this struggle together, and we are all here kind of working together. And even if you take just like one skill or one idea or one strategy away from this presentation today to manage your mental health, you are already doing amazing. It's all about, like Lisa and I were saying, baby steps. And it's just about trying to take care of ourselves in the best way we are capable of, and really just trying to keep ourselves safe during this pandemic and take care of our emotions during this pandemic. And I just hope that you can all remember that we are all doing the best we can, and we will get through this together. So thank you.
Yes, that's true. I agree with you. That's true. So that's wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for the conclusion and short summary and for the advice as well. All right. With that being said, I would like to apologize with everyone here if there are any mistakes or like any flaws, weaknesses from me as a moderator throughout the webinar for tonight. And yeah, we really hope to see you again in the next program. We do have a lot of programs and a lot of webinars waiting. So don't forget to grab the seat and get this opportunity to learn more from our expertise and our professionals, right? Okay, and before that, I would like to ask for everyone here, don't forget to follow our social media, YoungMinds social media, for the latest update. And do not forget to click on the subscribe button down below. Okay, and lastly, thank you, everyone. And also, thank you so much, Sabrina, for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you wake up really early in the Canada right now.
Yeah.
Yes. And we appreciate you guys being here with us tonight. With that being said, stay safe, goodbye, good night to all Malaysians, and good morning to all Canadians. And we will see you next time. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading